Welcome back. Imagine for just a moment you are Vern Buchanan and you have had some easy races over the years, but this time there's talk about a blue wave, and the Democrats believe you might be ripe for the taking. Imagine you are the winner of next week's Democratic primary and you have the best shot at taking out Vern in years. It could be a close one. Every vote counts. And there are over 10,000 African Americans in Sarasota County, making up 3.2% of the vote, 12,000 Hispanics, almost 4%. In Manatee, over 15,000 blacks, over 15,000 Hispanics. And guess what? Many of them are telling Democrats and Republicans their votes are up for grabs. And joining us for more are Rodney Jones, the Manatee County NAACP president, Rod Thompson of the RevolutionaryAct.com, and Susan Nylon of the Nylon Report. And Rodney, this is really your effort to basically tap into some, as I said earlier, some unflexed political power. Where did this idea come from?
We have been talking about it for quite some time, just waiting on the right energy. We think the energy is now. And you're absolutely correct. We do have a great deal of political might. We just haven't used it. We've had, for a variety of reasons, but it's really resonating now. And most importantly, it's resonating in the black church, which has a definitely large concrete voting bloc. And they have been 100% supportive of the black bloc vote.
We have been talking about this, at least for the last couple of months, as I mentioned earlier, because of the Alabama Senate race. After the Democrat won that race, Charles Barkley went on one of the networks and said this.
They've always had our votes, and they have abused our votes, and this is a wake-up call.
Susan, you are active in the Democratic Party around here, helping to get Democrats elected. Was that a wake-up call to Democrats to not take the African-American vote for granted?
I don't think they've ever taken the African-American vote for granted per se, but there is a sense that the only time they think about the vote is prior to an election, and I think that makes the big difference.
And Rod, do you see there is an opportunity here?
Absolutely. I think there's been an opportunity for a long time now. It seems like that there's been this growing sort of feeling among blacks. Stephen A. Smith, an ESPN commentator who I really enjoy, but I think 4 years ago, he said that it's time for blacks to vote all Republican for one cycle, to send a message to everybody that you can no longer take us for granted.
Okay, our conversation on the minority voting continues right after we get a check on the First Alert forecast with Chief Meteorologist Bob Harrigan. Welcome back. We're talking about a brand new effort to marshal the political influence of the minority community in the upcoming primary and midterm elections. And guess what? Many of them are telling Democrats and Republicans their votes are up for grabs. And joining us for more are Rodney Jones of the Manatee County NAACP, Rod Thompson of the RevolutionaryAct.com, and Susan Nylon of the Nylon Report. Now, I would imagine, Rodney, there are two areas here. The voter turnout, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, but also the system that you're putting into place in terms of getting both Republicans and Democrats and independents, for that matter, to come out and tell you what their views are and what they intend to do. How are you setting this up?
Yeah, it was really an eclectic process, Democrats, Republicans, independents. We set up our own debates. It's called the Black Bloc Vote Debate Series. We had them in the community, in the neighborhood, churches, schools, talked about the issues specific to the black community. At the same night of the debate, we break into 3 different groups. A millennial group, we got a strong millennial following, middle-aged group, which is 36 to 50, and then what we call the seasoned group, 51 on up, and we actually vet the candidates at that time. We form a consensus, and we come back and say who we're going to support.
What kind of turnout did you get?
At the District 2 debate, we had just under 100, but the attendees were from a wide variety of organizations, churches, Pan-Hellenic, Greek organizations, so we felt like we had a good sampling of the community to make that call.
And Rod, we just ended our series of school board debates in both counties here, and we saw that one Republican who was running for school board is getting the support of this group. And there are other Republicans who are also going to be getting the support. So obviously, Republicans feel like, or they are in the game here in terms of getting support from this new group?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, too, that you're seeing a whole change in the dynamic there, particularly with what I think we'll talk about more in the next segment, but there really is shifting sands here. And I don't know where it all sifts out to, but things are changing between what can be automatically expected between Republicans and Democrats. The change might not only be on the Democratic side.
And Susan, we're going to get into this more, but I'm sure Rodney is going to say that there is a perception that Democrats only come around close to Election Day, and that is some of the things that has to change.
Well, I would agree. I mean, in the same argument, there seems to be always an election going on, so there's not a lot of gap in between. But you're right, if the only interest in the community is around the election, it's very transparent and it's very difficult to overcome, so it has to be around.
Okay, we have to take another quick break. We're just getting warmed up. Our conversation on the minority vote will continue right after we get a quick break. Stay with us.
You're watching ABC 7 News at 7:30.
Welcome back. We are talking about a brand new effort to marshal the political influence of the minority community in the upcoming primary and midterm elections. And guess what? Many of them are telling Democrats and Republicans their votes are up for grabs. And joining us for more are Rodney Jones of the Manatee County NAACP, Rod Thompson of the RevolutionaryAct.com, and Susan Nylon of the Nylon Report. So Rodney, let me ask you the question this way, because we have a congressional race coming up here where it could be the best chance that Democrats have had in years in terms of going after that seat. Have both the Democratic candidates and Vern Buchanan showed up in the community on a regular basis to talk to the community about the issues that affect them and what they intend to do about it?
We don't see Democrats till election time, and that's the truth. I live in the neighborhood. I've lived there my entire life, and we don't see Democrats till election time because they come for one purpose and one purpose only, which is to get votes. After the elections, we don't see anyone.
And what about the Republicans?
Well, at Manatee County, of course, there's almost 25,000 more votes, so they don't care. They don't even put signs up, or they don't even market themselves to the black community.
Now that should be a wake-up call to David Shapiro and Jan Schneider, who are in that primary, and Vern Buchanan, who I've seen at different events around the community. And as we've been sitting here speaking, I got an email from Cheryl Wilson, who's the Manatee Democratic Chair, saying that she is trying to work with folks like you and others to get the vote out, and we're going to discuss that more here. But Rod, if there's a perception the Democrats have not been around in earnest and are only there on election day, surely that goes for Republican candidates for office as well.
Absolutely so. As a matter of fact, that's what makes this dynamic so interesting, because on the one hand, I feel like Democrats have taken the black vote for granted, but because the black vote has been so monolithic, between 87 and 90% Democrat, what that's meant is Republicans have just sort of ignored it every time there's been action. I mean, we've made efforts in Sarasota County to have real outreach and all, and it's just like against a brick wall in past years. And so that's why I think they feel marginalized, and I think rightly so, because the Democrats take them for granted, and the Republicans go, it's hopeless, so they don't even try.
Susan, I want to give you a chance to respond, and then I have a good question.
Okay. This is why I don't like focusing on the difference between parties itself. And the one thing I like at what Rodney is doing is he's focusing on the issues, because I think when you focus on the issues, you make the candidates work really hard for the vote. There's no assumptions. There's no assumption that the black vote is definitely and Hispanic vote going to be Democrat and vice versa.
Right, but during the 2016 election, Donald Trump said to African American voters, "What do you have to lose?" And Rod, I predict that if I ask you this question, you're going to point that African American unemployment is at an all-time low here. But on the other hand, you have the president directing comments to primarily black athletes, calling them sons of bitches over the kneeling at NFL games. And there is still a perception that this president, especially after Charlottesville and what he said, that this president is racist. And I would imagine that's counterproductive to the goal of winning increased support.
Yeah, complicated question there. Because you're
right.
Rod. The perception is indeed that Trump is racist. I don't actually think that's true. I think he's insensitive to everybody.
No,
I think. Well, wait. Let me finish.
He's
now.
racist.
Stop. Let me finish.
He is.
I think he's insensitive because who was it? Omarosa, I think. He said fired like a dog, right? And it was like, oh, this is such a racist thing. And then the Daily Wire goes out and finds out that he's called like 127 people a dog because he name calls people. He calls everybody names. I don't think it would have mattered at all if the NFL was all white and kneeling. I think if the if the NHL kneeled, he would do the same thing.
What about Haiti and Africa and all those other blank hole countries that he referred to?
Yeah, I think he was talking about third world countries. Obviously, third world countries got included brown ones too, and you still try and make the racism case there. I just don't actually see it outside of those sorts of things, except I will say Charlottesville did make me pause for a minute because I thought his response was horrible after Charlottesville.
And Rodney, I don't know if the camera caught it, but your reaction, but I did.
Yeah, Donald is tremendously hurting the Republican Party. I mean, there were already issues, image issues with the party for a lack of interest in the black community due to our voter turnout, which it should be based on people and what's best for people. But Mr. Trump has severely hurt that image, and most blacks and especially Hispanic Latins and women too. A lot of people have an issue with Mr. Trump. We got to call that how it is. You know, Mr. Trump has gotten to a point where his party, his core base, he could throw a baby off of a bridge and they would say, "Oh no, what he meant to do was." But
the truth is that the polls are showing increasing approval ratings of Trump by minorities. 8% of blacks voted for Trump in 2016. He now has 21% support. The NAACP had a poll also that showed a surprising amount of support, and according to Rasmussen poll, he's got twice the support of last year within their same poll. That's a lot of movement of positiveness.
There's another area I do want to get to during this segment, and Rodney, your efforts here are only going to be successful is if there is an increased voter turnout in the African American and Hispanic communities, because, and I know that you could predictably there was a top, the top was in 2008, but it's been trending down, and I'm wondering if there's a realization in the African American community, for that matter, that if there was a higher voting, if more people came out to vote, you would be in a position to wield more power and to influence who wins and who loses in this election, in these elections.
Yeah, that's very true. We take the Charles Smith. He won by 6 votes last time. For the very close, Harold Byrd beat Keenan Wooten by 300 or so votes. So for the very close races, we are the swing vote. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So we are just attempting to get more turnout. This was really an organizational effort for us up to the primary to work out all the kinks. So from here to the general, we're full speed, and we think we're going to make a difference.
We talked, first thing, you just talked about millennial voters. All millennial voters have a hard time getting to the polls and doing so. But what have young members of your community said to you about why they don't go out to vote more often?
Yeah, just kind of a little apathetic, not a lot of confidence in the process anymore for a lot of good reasons. We've got a broken political system. John Adams said it would be, the second president of the United States said the two-party system would end up exactly how it is. So people don't have a lot of, I hate to even hear the word Democrat, Republican. We should be talking about people and issues. We put the parties in front of people, and that's a huge mistake. So we're basically saying to hell with Democratic Party and the Republican Party, because both parties have been very counterproductive to black prosperity here in this country.
Susan, we do hear about how motivated Democratic voters are, especially now, but the Democrats, it appears, to have a lot of work ahead to get everyone who identifies as a Democrat, even though we're trying to look at things not party-wise, to come out.
Yeah, I would say, and the one thing the Democrats do locally is get out the vote. They do a really good job about that. And
not as good as the Republicans.
Yeah, well, I think it's a question of, right now there's more registered Republicans in our community and vice versa, but they do some great work at the local party. However, it's always overshadowed by people who just vote party line, and that's a problem.
Okay, we have to take a quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts in a moment. Stay with us. And our guests join us right now for final thoughts. So Rodney, I hear what you're saying in terms of Democrats should not take the African American vote for granted, and Republicans have to work at it. But I would imagine that there is probably a general perception by both Democrats and Republicans that in the minority community in general that your worldview is closer aligned to Democrats than Republicans. Is that fair to say or not?
I wouldn't say right now. I think we're shifting to more issue focus and what's basically a community concept where we're not letting Republican or Democratic come into our community and set an agenda for us. We're setting our own agenda, and they're based on the issues that are facing the community. So here again, I'm kind of anti-Democratic and Republican Party based on the history of the party system. The Democratic Party comes out of the Deep South, actually out of the Klan and white supremacy because they supported the Confederacy. That's the truth. The Republican Party, blacks were Republicans due to Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation, not knowing that Abraham Lincoln said that he would not have freed the slaves if he could do so and preserve the Union. He would not do so.
On the other hand, you are no fan of Donald Trump.
I am no fan of Trump. I don't see how anyone that has a breadth of character in them would be a fan of Donald Trump.
Well, Rod, you do have a breadth of character, and you are a fan of Donald Trump.
Well, I'm a fan of Donald Trump's policies, and I've tried to delineate that on your show. His personal life, I have a lot of issues with.
We're going to do another show on that very issue, but
so
go on.
I am very comfortable with what Rodney is saying. I would love to be able to have the opportunity as a conservative to talk to the black community about conservative principles that are then reflected in conservative policies that I think are far more beneficial and far more closely aligned to the traditional black way of thinking than it is with what the Democratic Party brings to the table.
Well, and I want to be a part of that conversation then if you're going to get to do it, because I would add to that.
But Susan, on the other hand, I would imagine that even in the next election, that the African American community, the majority of voters will vote for Democrats. It may not be at the same percentages as it always has been, but obviously the party itself has its work cut out for it.
We always have our work cut out for it. I mean, nobody should ever take a vote for granted. I think it changes depending upon whether it's a local election, a state election, or a federal election. I think that's where there's a variance, like Rodney was saying a little bit earlier. You know, we tend to get a little bit more conservative when it directly impacts us in our schools and, you know, in our homes, and then it branches out from there. So, but to just assume that we got your vote, I don't have to worry about you, like the Republicans don't even bother because they don't think they have a chance. That's wrong all the way around. And again, I want to say it needs to be focused on the issues.
Okay, we have to leave it there. But before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers had to say about last night's show on the governor's race. 1 week for today, we will narrow the field for governor down to two, one Republican, one Democrat. Who will they be is anyone's guess. Polls have three of the Democratic candidates within a few percentage points of one another. On the Republican side, it is neck and neck between Ron DeSantis and Adam Putnam. So we went to Facebook to hear who wants to be the next Florida governor. And Andrew says, elections have consequences, folks. You like what's happening to our Gulf? Dead zone, persistent red tide, can't swim in the water, empty beaches, failing businesses. Can you imagine the outcry if all this disaster were happening under a Democratic governor? Time for change. Voting for more of the same will just get us more of the same. And Barry says, Adam Putnam as governor, he will defend our Second Amendment rights. And Sue Ann says, independent voter here. I have lived in Florida most of my life. I have voted for governors from both parties. I just voted for Ron DeSantis. To me, somehow, I feel Adam Putnam is a career opportunist type politician, part of the good old boy network in Tallahassee. One thing I don't get, Sue Ann, if you're a registered independent, you can't vote in the primary. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation on tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/MySuncoast. We want to thank our guests for being here tonight. Rodney Jones is with the NAACP in Manatee County, Rod Thompson of the RevolutionaryAct.com, and Susan Nylon of the Nylon Report.